Hey guys, it's your humble host, or Kill if you prefer. So I'm back with another video. So I want to preface this before I give my opinion. I usually don't do videos like this, and I usually watch other people's coverage of situations like this. Um, but the reason why I wanted to give my take, and again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a cop, I'm not any legal authority. My current job right now is security guard unarmed. But there is some training that I'm going through, and so you guys have been there to where you get training on certain stuff, and then your brain starts to kind of dissect. And so I just wanted to give my humble opinion, take it with a grain of salt. I have no experience with physical altercations. God forbid I ever get into one. I've never had to fire a gun at somebody. Don't want to. I am pro Second Amendment, but you guys get what I'm saying. So with all of those disclaimers out of the way, let's get to this. So as I said, I'm currently going through some training, a lot of legalities and what security guards can or cannot do. And I wanted to talk about this because I wanted to give my thoughts and opinions. So actually, I'm going to pull something up real quick because I want to show you. So this is what is pretty standard for police officers. Let me see if you guys can actually see this. Yes, you can. So what this is called is use of force model. So you have cooperative tactics, you have contact controls, you have compliance techniques, defensive tactics, and then deadly force. So this is pretty much a flow chart, how to gauge a certain situation, and this is what cops use to see whether or not they need to use lethal force or what level, depending on the situation and how the person they're talking to is responding. And this is actually used also by security guards, the legalities, and to explain by state law, according to my state, and I'm sure many others, what a security guard can or can't do, and when it's okay to use defense tactics versus cooperative controls. So pretty much applying is pretty standard where they're responding to the officer, they're being respectful, there's no physical aggression, they're not being passive aggressive, resistant passive, name calling, being verbally argumentative, allowing the officer to physically control them if that's necessary. Just FYI, I'm a security guard unarmed, so I do not physically touch. But I'm just talking about this in general. So resistive active, the person is resisting arrest, they're starting to fuss with the officer, they're not putting their hands behind their back. Assaultive bodily harm, this is where they're starting to physically fight with the officer, scuffle, and it can turn into deadly force where they're trying to reach for the officer's weapons, they're trying to stab the officer, they're trying to punch him, beat the crap out of him. So, yeah. So, in a sense, I wanted to give a little bit of context because this is actually kind of important. And I'm not going to show the videos because YouTube is going to take my video down, obviously. This is not monetized. So I'm going to link the article in the description below for you guys to go watch the videos. I did watch a breakdown by Officer Tatum, but for some reason he removed the video, which I'm not entirely sure why that is. I'm going to read the copy of the comment I left. But anyway, let's get to the article itself. I'll go over what that is. So protests broke out in Grand Rapids on Wednesday evening following the release of the footage. Again, I'm not going to play it. There's 3 different footage takes. There's the body cam, which on a police officer, it's pretty standard to use a model known as T9. And with the T9 model, and I don't know if this is true for all police departments, I know the ones around here in my state all use this model, and my previous security company also used this model because you can shut it off the noise. Like it won't announce when it's on and off. That can actually piss people off when you're dealing with a hostile individual to have that camera announce when it's on. And so I have like this big button that you could just lightly tap, and I'll even pull up a picture of to show you what a T9 is real quick. Because I have used one of these. Come on. Give it. Because I know I'm doing. Okay, so that is an older version. I have used that model too. Where is the newer one? That actually might be the new version. Because there was 2 versions I used over at my previous security company. Anyway, so we're gonna look at the image here. Let me see if you guys can see this. Yes, excellent. Oh, this camera is pretty standard, and just by kind of looking at it, yeah, that's the new one. I do apologize. There's a new one and an old one that I used at my previous security company. My new security company that I work for has a completely different body cam. Anyway, so you see this big button right here? That button is super duper sensitive. So if you're driving in the car and you have a seatbelt over, it'll sometimes just come on by itself. So this is pretty standard for a lot of police departments. Again, not every police department uses this model. It's a very efficient model, in my opinion, very quiet, easily turned on and off. So, and that's actually going to come into play because the way that particular model goes on, there's a chest plate, which is 2 pieces. You have the front magnet part and you have the back magnet part, and then that T9 screws in there and sits upright like that. So, because during the scuffle, the officer's body cam not only deactivated, which on a T9 is very easy to do because if you hold down that big button for a few seconds, it's going to vibrate and it's going to shut off. Now, the way that it came off the officer's chest plate, because all it said was the body cam was found later on after the police went to go look for it. So it doesn't take that much force to screw it that way, and once it's sideways like that, it can actually fall out. So that T9 is both efficient yet sensitive. Anyway, so let's go through the article. The Grand Rapids Police Department released several videos on Wednesday of an officer shooting and a killing of a black man last week during a traffic stop after a brief struggle over the officer's taser. Now, as I said, there's 3 shots. There's the dash cam, which is what's on the squad car, and so that'll take a certain amount of footage. And then there's the body cam, which is on the chest, and then you have somebody taking a recorded cell phone video. Now there's 3 different angles, 3 different shots. The release, which included dash cam footage, body cam footage, and neighbor's doorbell camera. So that's 4 because they got it from also the dash cam. There's an angle from the dash cam of the car, so that's technically 4. Was released quickly for the sake of transparency, Grand Rapids Police Chief Eric Winstrom said. The officer, a white man who has not been identified, pulled 26-year-old Patrick Lyoya over this morning of April 4th because his car tags didn't belong in the vehicle, which is likely indication of theft and the way that the guy acted when he got out of the car, because the officer told him to stay and the guy got out of the car, tried to play stupid, and then took off. Lyoya, who is from the Democratic Republic of Congo, got out of the car before the officer could reach him. The officer asked for his license and told him to get back in the car, but Lyoya refused, then started running away. After a brief foot chase, the officer grabbed Lyoya and the 2 started struggling for the officer's taser. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a legal expert. I am none of those things. But when it comes to the use of force, let me explain, because, again, I'm not an expert. I'm recently going through this training, so my brain has been starting to dissect a lot of this stuff, and it's very interesting, and it's very technical. It can be very complex. So, say, for example, we'll use this scuffle for example. there's something, the situation could call for deadly force, and then a minute later, if not 5 seconds later, it could call for compliance techniques. So, in a nutshell, the situation can de-escalate. Now, let me preface this too, because I do teach this with training for security guards and police. It is a lot harder to de-escalate something and a lot easier to escalate. Let me repeat that again. When a situation has been escalated, it is harder to de-escalate. And when a situation is de-escalated, it is much easier to escalate. And that's why they talk about body posture, language, how you approach the individual or said individuals. So, but anyway, the use of force can change in a matter of seconds. And cops are trained a lot more than security guards. Now, depending on your background, you do have retired cops, military, other legal professionals who do enter the security force. So I do keep that in mind, but at the same time, is you can have something go from compliant to assaultive. You can have cooperative controls used, meaning the person is being very responsible, respectable. He's saying all the stuff respectfully. No physical aggression, no insults, cussing, things like that. And then in an instant, it could go to deadly force. Or it could go the complete opposite. So again, I'm not an expert. I'm just explaining the chart and what is being trained to me to be a better security guard. So let me also explain the taser, because I actually had to look into this the other night. I, as a security guard, do not use a taser. This requires not only online certification, but it requires physical training. Now, it is different from a stun gun. A taser has two metal prongs that eject, connected to wires that deliver an electric shock and paralyzes the muscles temporarily, giving the officer a window to make an arrest or whatever. A stun gun is a compliance tool, and it distributes pain in order to get the person to comply. Now, let me show you the reason why the scuffling for the taser is important, because you already have the family's lawyer of the Lyoya, Ben Krupp, showing the last 23 seconds and saying that Lyoya died at a car stop and it was unnecessary, blah, 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 blah. So let me explain why it's important to know what type of taser and if it was still usable. And one more thing, because this article actually covers it. The taser was used twice, and we're going to go over, because there are tasers. It used to be where the taser just had one shot to it, to where one cartridge, that's where the electric stuff comes from, and can only be used once. And a lot of the older tasers did not have the stun gun ability like these new advanced models do, and they're actually pretty advanced. So let me get into this one real quick. I believe this one is an X2 or X12. So these days, a lot of these tasers have multiple cartridges, and a cartridge allows a taser to be shot and used more than once. Let me see. Okay, that's statistics. I don't care about that. So you have the barbed darts, you have the trigger, and it's attached to a wire. Oh, this is the X2 model. Okay, so there is higher models than this. They're just using the X2. But yeah, so let me just read this, because this is off to the side. You guys can't see this, but I can post this link in the description below. Tasers have two firing modes. In standard dart mode, which are these prongs right here, the gun-shaped weapon uses compressed nitrogen to fire a pair of barbed darts that are connected to the taser by thin wires. When the darts embed or lodge in clothing near the skin, a pulse current causes a neuromuscular response that paralyzes the subject for several seconds, allowing police a window to apply handcuffs. Many taser models can shoot only one pair of darts before changing the firing cartridge that clips to the front of the weapon, but some can hold 2 or even 3 cartridges, allowing for more shots before reloading. The X2 model, this one, shown here, holds 2 cartridges, so it can fire 2 sets of darts without reloading. So you have one set go out, and then you have a second one. So that's what it means in the cartridges. The cartridges hold these darts. Let me scroll down because it begins to dissect this a little bit more. Now, as I said, a lot of advanced tasers now have a stun gun feature. That stun gun feature is directly applied to the skin, and it's a pain compliance tool. Yeah. And this is important too because if people are clever, this stuff is going to come up in court. In drive stun mode, the taser works more like a conventional stun gun. Press it against a person's body, pull the trigger, and it delivers a powerful shock akin to a cattle prod. It doesn't cause paralysis, but sends an electric jolt that causes intense pain. This mode is often used as a pain compliance technique to get a resistant subject to abide by an officer's orders. So again, a lot of these advanced tasers have two modes. They have the taser, dart mode, and then they have stun gun. Both still very painful and disabling. Now, so it talks about the cartridges. Now, this particular model has two, meaning two sets of barbs go out so it can be fired twice. Now, in the article, because I'm going to show you, so then that's Ben Krupp, Attorney Krupp on Twitter. Let's see. We demand that the officer who killed Patrick not only be terminated for his use of excessive fatal force, but is arrested and prosecuted for killing of Patrick Lyoya. And from what I've seen of Ben Krupp, he's a freaking grifter and race baiter. Very annoying. Where are you at? Because it does mention in this article that the taser was used twice. Oh, come on. Where are you at? Nope. Nope. Oh, jeez. Okay, here we go. So after about 2 minutes, the officer pulled his handgun, shot Lyoya in the head, killing him. From my view of the video, the taser was deployed twice. So you heard the electric, like the taser is loud when the electric currents go, so twice. Now keep that in mind because, as I said, I'm not a legal expert, but depending on the model of the taser, did it have a stun gun feature? Because if that's the case, the taser itself was still a usable and deadly weapon. As I said, the stun gun feature on these is a compliance tool and delivers a painful shock. Another thing to keep in mind too is, did it still have more cartridges? The reason why that's important, because there was a struggle over it and the guy tried to get it away from the cop. Like if you watch the footage, when the cop first deploys it, the guy grabs it and tries, like, that's when they tumble over each other. But he was brazen enough to grab it. So he was already proved himself a danger and willing to grab at the officer's tools. But yeah, Ben Krupp just. So in that instance, because the situation kept escalating, and it's like I said, the reason why the taser is so important, because whether or not it was still a deadly weapon, still able to be used as a deadly weapon, that's such a big deal. And a cartridge, because here's another website I pulled up on tasers, is can taser cartridges be reused? Tasers can be effective means of self-defense and are easily concealed. For those who don't want to carry a concealed firearm, a taser may be a right solution for you. Let's get down to it. A taser has one cartridge that allows you to fire two small dart-like electrodes with one shot. Once you pull the trigger, it fires two dart-like electrodes out, which stay connected to the gun-like device you shoot from. These two penetrating darts are propelled by a small compressed nitrogen containers that reside within the cartridge. Once the two dart electrodes penetrate the skin of the attacker, they almost certainly will drop to the ground and won't be able to move much, if at all. Okay, here we go. The cartridges are single use, so keep that in mind. They are single use, and it was reported by, I want to say, the police chief here, that he saw in his video, from his view, that the taser was deployed twice. So we already know 2 cartridges was used. Now, question is, does it have a stun gun feature? If not, was there a third cartridge available for the officer to use? So at that point, because I did ask one of my superiors today, because I had to go in the office, yesterday, because they have all the PD training and they're going to be leaving for the police force. So I had asked them, hey, I have a question for you. If the officer knows that the taser is practically useless, it's spent, it doesn't have a stun gun feature, its cartridges are ran out, and they're still scuffling for it, is it excessive force to shoot the guy in the back of the head if the officer knows that the taser is well spent and it does not have that second stun gun feature? And to which I got told the answer yes. That's only if the taser is spent. And again, I don't know the laws and legalities around that, but if the taser is no longer a threat, a weapon, and there's no stun gun feature, there's no more cartridges to be used, then at that point, the officer and the suspect are scuffling for something that just, it's not usable. It's not going to cause any bodily harm. It's not going to disable either one. So if that is the case, from my opinion, from the training and from my talk with my superior, who is going to be a police officer here in the next month or so, that is excessive force and that is illegal. That is grounds for a lawsuit, reformation, all that crap. Now, however, if, from my understanding of my training and the conversation I had, if that is an advanced model of a taser and it still has either A, B, or C, A still has one cartridge left for use because it's already depleted twice and it's 2 barbs, 1 cartridge are not reusable. Once it's spent, it's done. B, it has a stun gun feature, which is a pain compliance tool to which the guy can take it and try to disable the police officer with it. 3, it has both. It has a cartridge still, and it has a stun gun feature. Again, look into how advanced these things are. I had to look into it because you're used to like the TV trope to where it's they shoot it one and done. So unless you have training or you're more advanced in taser use, you would actually have to look this stuff up. And I did because I don't use a taser on my job. So that is my take. If the taser was useless, then that cop is in deep shit. Really deep shit, because that would be excessive force. And at that point, because if you see in the video, he has his left hand pinning the guy down and he reaches behind him with his right for the gun, which he has other stuff on his work belt to which he couldn't reach. But at the same time, if that taser was useless, that cop's in deep shit. Now, granted, when you watch the body cam footage, you can hear heavy breathing. Officer Tatum pointing this out, and I'd link you the video, but he took it down. I don't know why he took it down. But you can hear heavy breathing. Both men are spent and are at their limit. Now, something that my training also mentions, because I get a little bit of the same training in text form as police officers. But again, I haven't gone through any of the physical stuff. I'm not a police officer, so I don't have the same experiences. And like I said, I haven't been in a physical altercation. God forbid I ever do, or have had to pull a firearm or weapon or anything like that to defend myself. But according to the training, if you do not have any type of martial arts, if you don't have any type of physical training to fall back on to deal with somebody who's being actively resistant, then you are legally allowed to use what's called compliance techniques. Contact controls are where you're trying to usher the individual, so like, hey, come this way, and just lightly touch, but they're resisting and they're starting to fight and things like that. So then you can use compliance techniques, so like, hey, you need to do this, you need to listen before I get more physical with you. And there's a professional way to do that. You just can't throw somebody to the ground. You just can't beat them with a nightstick or baton. So there's a lot of technical stuff and a lot of legalities that if you cross those lines, those thresholds, you are doing illegal activity as both a security guard and a police officer, and you are open for lawsuits, not only for you, but for the company or employer you work for. Yeah, it's like I said, there's a lot of little bits you have to keep track of and mindful of. So that is why it's so important. And because I'm recently going through this stuff, and because they're scuffling for the taser, As I said, if it were me, and again, I have no legal training, but if it were me and if I was the defense attorney, both defense and prosecution, because of the freaking petty bullshit, because of what's going on, because Ben Krupp is already pulling the emotional card. He's appealing to emotion. Oh, another black man got killed, blah, 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 blah. Police bad, blah, 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 blah. We've heard this shtick before. But I'd hone in on that taser, and I'd hone in like what type, what standard for PD of Grand Rapids to carry. Is it different by precinct, by district, what have you? So I'd hone in, and if that taser was still usable as a deadly weapon, whether it had a cartridge or a stun gun feature or both, in my opinion, the cop would have been justified, because had that guy gotten a hold of that taser and it was still usable as a weapon with another cartridge and stun gun, then he had every right to use lethal force. However, if that stun gun was incapacitated, it was non-usable after the second cartridge had been used, he's in deep shit. So, like I said, this is small stuff, this is technical stuff, this is very important stuff. And for those of you who have never been through security guard training or in PD, some of this stuff are just like, oh, I didn't know that. So I didn't know a lot of this stuff either. And there's so much technicalities and so many ways you can turn something into illegal activity. And so yeah. Anyway, I'm going to keep an eye on this, and hopefully this video stays up, and hopefully what I said makes sense. I'm going to put the link to the article. I'm going to put the link to the website of the X2 getting dissected and the parts explained. I'm going to put a link in the description of the other article about can a cartridge of a taser be used after the rods, or excuse me, the barbs have been expelled from the weapon. So with that being said, fingers crossed that justice prevails. And I usually don't cover this stuff. I am not going to make a habit of it. But I just want to give my thoughts and takes because of the recent training I had. That is the only reason why. So hopefully this video stays up. And you guys have a good one. And I'd keep an eye on this if I were you.